What did we fail on? Was it that we created an authority system that didn't support this man being cared for in a just manner? Good morning, relatives. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past week and a half, then you must be made aware of the situation that's happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota, here in the United States. I'm sure that for most of us, George Floyd has become a household name. And Derek Chauvin, the officer who committed this crime against Mr. Floyd, is reaping a lot of energy. We'll just call it energy from the public. So what I want to get on here to say is I've really taken some time to gather my thoughts and to reflect about this. And I wanted to share them here, not expecting everybody to agree with me, not expecting everybody to like what I have to say, but to let this be a demonstration of my truth and an expression of truth that I hope all of us can be in a similar conversation around. Because one thing that's been made apparent to me as I've been listening over these past 10 days is that there's a lot of discord and disagreement happening in our country and in the Western world and in the planet at large. There's a lot of places in society in which we still disagree with one another, whether it's based on race or color or economic class or religious faith, spirituality based principles. There's still a lot of things where we don't agree with one another. I remember when I was a lot younger, I used to think that there was some middle ground, some common ground that every human being would be able to rally around. Back when I was a little more idealistic, I used to think that there must be some way for all of us to get on the same page. And events like this, what's happening in Minnesota, events like are happening in all other parts of this country and many other countries around the world are reinforcing this idea that we may not be able to agree. We may not be able to come to agreements on the way that we should conduct ourselves and the way that we should be able to be with one another. But the biggest, most painful thing for me is to see that we're still making it okay for us to treat humans a certain way. Now, I'm going to take a step back for a minute, because if you guys know me at all, I like to look to nature as a reference, as a teacher, as an informant. And in nature, if you've ever spent some time out there, you'll see that nature is ruthless. Nature is aggressive, nature is bloody, nature is violent at times. It's also beautiful and magical, but the pure foundation of the circle of life requires that there is death in order for there to be life. So every other animal on this planet is living in a life and death cycle on a day-to-day basis. Death is not such a foreign concept or experience to the rest of the animal kingdom. In fact, most animals on this planet live in a life and death cycle every day that has them so present in the moment that they don't know if they're going to see another tomorrow. Just imagine that for a second. Imagine what it's like to be a deer that is constantly being pursued by some predator. Now, what does that have to do with George Floyd? What does that have to do with police brutality? The fact is that we as humans are still animals. In fact, we're a lot closer to animals than we are to this new version of higher conscious beings that so many of us like to applaud ourselves for being. You know, just several generations ago, maybe less than a couple millennia, we were living in societies where war, rape, pillage, plundering were natural parts of the human existence. Now, let me just say for a second, I much prefer the society that we live in now to what our ancestors had to deal with centuries, millennia ago. I don't want to live in a society where I have to worry about the safety of my children, of my wife, of myself, of my loved ones every single day. But the fact remains is that there's still a part of us in our bodies, in our brains, that is animalistic, that prioritizes my survival over yours. And the only way that we can live in a higher conscious society, like so many of us speak of, is for all of us to be able to transcend that reptilian's part of our brain, that space in our brain that is all about ego, that's all about self-preservation, that's more community-oriented, pack-oriented, tribe-oriented. And from what I've seen, what's been evidenced in the past week, and really for my whole life that I've witnessed, is that we're not there yet. Some of us are closer than others, but as a society, we're still a lot closer to that self-referenced reptilian me first mindset than we are the we first mindset. And so part of me isn't even surprised by events like this. It's always shocking when you see life leave a person's body. So with the culture that we live in, where everything is on video now, seeing a man have his life leave his body is shocking. And frankly, I think the media is leveraging the shock value to get more people's attention, to raise more energy around this, to really pour kerosene on the problem instead of moving towards a solution. And I know a lot of people are seeking justice, and I think that justice has its place. But I'm always looking towards, how did we fail every person in this experience? How did we as a society fail George Floyd? What did we fail on? Was it that we created an authority system that didn't support this man being cared for in a just manner? Did we fail him in his upbringing and his education? I don't know enough about his history to really say, but it's clear that we could have served this man better, even if it was just to prepare our police officers to manage their emotions and their energy and their anger and their hate better than these officers did. How did we fail Derek Chauvin? How did we fail that team of police officers? Where did he not get love when he needed it? Where did he not get seen, heard? Where did we fail to provide him an outlet for his anger and his frustration? Before this happened, Derek Chauvin was another man in his 40s going through a divorce. How many of you guys watching this video are just like that? A man in your 40s going through a divorce, feeling the pain of separation. Who knows the story behind what's going on in his personal life? But how quick are we to judge a man just by one thing, one part, one element of his life, and fail to see the rest of the picture? Because we don't want to take responsibility as a community for how this stuff can happen. That's not to excuse him from his actions. I absolutely agree that holding individuals accountable for what we choose to do is essential. But we also have to hold ourselves as a community, as a global community, accountable to letting these things happen. And I think that that's where so much of the energy and so much of the anger in response to this event is coming from. We all want to see a society where we don't have to worry for our own safety. And I believe that we can create a society that's built around safety for all people. But we also have to remember where we live. At least here in the United States, this is probably the greatest social experiment that we've ever seen on this planet, where we take people from so many years of tradition around religion, beliefs about family, and combine them into this huge, they call it the melting pot. They call the United States literally a melting pot of all these different belief systems, these different colors, these different races, sizes, shapes, ways of being. And we've put them all into one place. And now we're looking at, well, what happens? What happens when we put all of these people together? What happens when we bring people of mixed color, mixed races, and tell them to cohabitate with one another, to figure it out? Do we really think that thousands and thousands and thousands of years of culture and tradition coming from pure ancestral lineages and then mixing them all together was not going to have some bumps along the way? And also, let's remember that white, Caucasian, people of European descent were the only people who came to this country as free people. People who came here to colonize and create something. Colored folks, people from Africa, Asia, South America, they came to this country, yes, to help create it, but always in a lesser position than certain people. And yet, here we are in this day and age, and we are shocked by the fact that this keeps happening. I'm not. And it hurts to say that. I've sat with this for a while because my own pain is connected to the fact that there's still people in this world who don't have an outlet for their hardships, for their frustrations, for their challenges, for their anger. We have men all over the world right now who are suffering from depression, from anxiety, who are battling addictions to alcohol, substances, porn, masturbation, sex, overeating. Men are homeless and sick at a rate that far outweighs our female counterparts. That's where my attention goes. All the conversation about justice, about the legal system, about our constitutional rights, that's not my strong suit. I support that fight because I think that we all get to be clear on what our agreed upon rights are as human beings. But for me, my attention goes to how are we failing our men? How are we failing the men in our communities? Whether they're police officers, whether it's just a guy trying to go pay for something at a grocery store, at a supermarket, if they're the father walking down the street, if you're the man clocking into work in the morning and working a 12-hour day, if you're the guy who can't seem to keep it all together and take care of a family, so you book it, how are we failing these guys? And where do we all as men, looking at ourselves in the mirror, get to hold ourselves more accountable to create a society that we want to be a part of? I don't want to raise my children in a world where they have to see people committing violence against each other. I don't think we have to live in that world. I do believe in the goodness in people. I do believe that we have enough education and know-how to override our reptilian response. But it's not going to happen without some hard work. It's not going to happen without bumps in the road. And it's certainly not going to happen if we won't take responsibility for all of it collectively. And so, to wrap this all up, I want to express my grief and my condolences to George Floyd, his family, all of the other folks that have recently made news for having some sort of violence perpetrated upon them by people of a different race, a different color, a different creed. I want to express my grief that we haven't figured out a way to cohabitate together. I also want to express my grief that there are so many people right now protesting in anger, rioting in anger. It really pains me to see that, because all I see is a push receiving a stronger push back. There has to be conversation. There has to be agreements and reconciliation here. I understand raising our voices so that we can be heard, but that doesn't require that we also destroy. We don't have to destroy anything in order to achieve progress and change. And maybe that's easy for me to say because I've never lost a loved one in this type of situation or circumstance. But from what I'm witnessing, this requires awareness, visibility, conversation, and collective accountability. So if you're watching this, my question to you is, where can you be more accountable to this event that we're living through right now? What is your responsibility? What place will you take in this mission to create a society that we all want to live in right now? And not only that, a society we want to hand off to our children, because to me, that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day. I don't want to give my children a society where it's okay for police to hurt citizens. I don't want to hand them a reality where they see people on TV robbing things from stores, starting fires, throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers firing back at civilians. It's lunacy. And I don't want that for my children. I don't want that for your children either. So let's deepen into this conversation. For those of us who are in this work as men, let's recognize that although there are police officers out there, there's still men. Although there are men imprisoned and behind bars, there's still men. Although there's men who are committing suicide, who are raping, who are abusing, there's still men who were failed by us at some point. Let them be accountable to their actions, but let's also take responsibility for our own. I give you guys all my love, all my blessings. I say this with a heavy heart, but with great optimism for the future. Because I know that there's a lot of good men on this planet who won't let our children inherit the type of reality that we've lived in so far. So I wish you all many blessings. Stay safe out there. Express your voice in a powerful way that is constructive, that is not destructive, that brings people closer together instead of ripping them apart. If you liked this video and something hit you powerfully from it, then please share it. Please spread this message. Tell us how you feel in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going, because that's the most important thing that we can do as men right now. So to all you out there, stay blessed.
Rise up and claim your destiny.